All right, let's dive in. Today we're talking about a discovery that honestly shouldn't exist. It's something that completely flips the script on the entire story of human civilization.
It all really boils down to this one huge question. For decades, archaeologists were pretty sure they had the answer locked down. But as we're about to see, one mysterious temple in the Turkish countryside forced everybody to rethink the very beginnings of society.
I mean, you probably remember the story we all learned in school. It seems logical enough, right? First, humans figure out farming. That stable food supply lets them settle down and build towns. And then, and only then, once survival is sorted, do they have the time and energy for complex things like art and religion. It's a neat and tidy timeline. But what if it's completely wrong?
Yeah, what if that entire progression is backwards? Let's take a trip to a rocky hilltop in modern-day Turkey, where archaeologists dug up something that just shatters that old narrative into a million pieces.
The site is called Göbekli Tepe, which means Potbelly Hill. For the longest time, it was just written off as some medieval cemetery. But buried just beneath the surface was the world's oldest known temple complex, a discovery that would literally rewrite the first chapter of human history.
And this is where things get really, really strange. The very existence of Göbekli Tepe is a huge paradox. A sophisticated, massive temple built thousands of years before anyone even thought about building the first city. How is that even possible?
So, just how old are we talking? Well, the site dates back to about 9,600 BCE. That's almost 12,000 years ago. Let that number sink in for a minute. This isn't just old, it's so ancient, it's almost impossible to wrap your head around.
To put that into perspective, Göbekli Tepe is more than twice as old as the Great Pyramid. It was built over 6,000 years before Stonehenge. The people who carved these stones were actually closer in time to our Ice Age ancestors than they were to the ancient Romans. It's absolutely mind-boggling. And this wasn't some primitive little shack. The site is this incredible complex of massive stone rings made from T-shaped limestone pillars that weigh up to 20 tons each. These pillars are just covered in these detailed carvings of animals, foxes, snakes, vultures. But get this, some of the pillars even have stylized human arms and hands carved into their sides, as if they represent these powerful, ancient beings.
And here is the absolute bombshell, the crucial piece of the puzzle. All the evidence tells us Göbekli Tepe was built by hunter-gatherers. These were nomadic people, they didn't have pottery, they didn't have writing, and most importantly, they didn't have agriculture. So how in the world could a society that didn't farm organize the massive workforce needed to quarry, move, and set up these giant stones? It defies everything we thought we knew.
This crazy paradox has led to a revolutionary new theory, a total rethink of our origins that gives us a brand new story for how civilization even started. So here's the paradigm shift in a nutshell. The old story says religion is what happens after you get farming in cities. But this new story, the Göbekli Tepe story, flips that script completely. It suggests that the desire to come together for ritual, for religion, might have been the actual spark that kicked off civilization and even led to farming itself.
This brings us to what's called the religion-first hypothesis. And the theory is pretty simple. Building a place like this meant hundreds of people had to gather in one place for long periods of time. But how do you feed all those workers? Well, the constant need for food may have been the very motivation that pushed these people to invent farming, to figure out how to domesticate plants and animals for a steady food supply.
And there's some really compelling evidence to back this up. In the hills right around Göbekli Tepe, geneticists have traced the origins of some of the world's very first domesticated wheat. So it seems the world's first temple wasn't just a place of worship. It might have also been the world's first farm.
But just when you think you're starting to get a handle on this incredible place, Göbekli Tepe throws another mystery at us. Its story doesn't just end with people walking away, it ends with a very deliberate and very puzzling final act.
So, after more than 1,000 years of use, something strange happened around 8,000 BCE. The people who built this temple intentionally buried it. I mean, they filled every single circle with tons of earth, stone, and animal bones, creating the very hill that kept it perfectly preserved for millennia. The question is, why? Why on earth would you entomb your most sacred place?
Honestly, nobody knows for sure. Was it some kind of ritual, like a respectful way to put the temple to rest as their beliefs changed? Did the site just lose its spiritual power for them? Or maybe it was a practical choice, and as farming took over, they just moved on. For now, it's still a profound mystery.
And maybe the most incredible part of this whole thing is that we've only just scratched the surface. Ground-penetrating radar shows that the enclosures we've seen are just a tiny piece of what's still buried. There could be dozens more circles still underground, each one holding new secrets about our ancient past.
So what's the ultimate takeaway from this unbelievable place? What does this ancient temple, built by hunter-gatherers on the cusp of a new world, really tell us about who we are? It tells us that the need to find our place in the universe, to gather together and create meaning, isn't a luxury that comes after you've figured out basic survival. It might just be the very thing that drives us to innovate in the first place. The lesson of Göbekli Tepe is that before we were farmers, before we built cities, we were pilgrims, driven by a profound and ancient quest for meaning.